Now, yesterday at D23, we got a look at the near future of the Star Wars franchise, all of which will be on Disney+, considering any and all rumors of a new movie or new trilogy being announced at this weekend's convention were completely bogus. Nor were there any updates about the films supposedly in the works or on the verge of maybe being in the works someday, like Rogue Squadron or the Taika Waititi film. Either way, what we did get were 3 new trailers for upcoming Disney Plus shows, a few release dates, and other tidbits of information or images from shows that will probably be released next year sometime. In fact, with a little guesswork or a little guesstimating, we can probably map out the next year's worth of Star Wars content, which is what I plan to do here in this video, as well as give some brief thoughts on these individual upcoming projects. Though first of all, I must say that overall, or in general, what's coming does look rather promising. Like it could be a good year for Star Wars, or a really good year. And I know all the sayings that could apply to me right now. Like, fool me once Disney, shame on you, fool me twice, or 3 or 4 times, shame on me at this point. In other words, I know I've been excited for something before only to end up not liking it so much. I know I've set myself up for disappointment before, and I keep coming back for more. And I know a lot of people who watch my videos are all but done with Star Wars, which I get considering one of Lucasfilm's biggest issues has been their handling of legacy characters, among other things. And I get being disappointed and not wanting to get your hopes up anymore or give Disney your money anymore. But the truth is, from my perspective at least, pretty much everything that hasn't involved legacy characters, that's instead used brand new characters and ideas, has actually been pretty good. And almost everything upcoming doesn't have, or at least won't feature, any legacy characters. Starting with Andor, which we get a short new trailer for yesterday, though most of it seemed to be reuse or stuff we've seen elsewhere. Which is fine by me considering it's roughly 10 days away and the first 3 episodes will be dropping on September 21st, meaning I don't need any more teases, I'm just ready for the series itself. And of all the upcoming shows, I think this one, or I hope this one, will be the most surprising of the bunch in a good way. It looks to have that same kind of vibe or feeling that Rogue One had, which is arguably the most liked Disney Star Wars film to date. And that vibe is something that feels a little more gritty or grounded or realistic, if you will. Which means, for better or worse, it will move away from the Force and the Jedi-Sith conflict and all of that type of fun stuff. Which, yes, is basically what makes Star Wars, or what separates it from other franchises out there. But certainly there is plenty of room, for stories that don't always involve Force users and focus on other cool or interesting aspects of the Star Wars galaxy. Or on other types of characters within it, like the Mandalorian kind of does, for example, even though, yeah, it does have Grogu who uses the Force. And I know there are some leery about this show, considering we have heard from some of the actors how aspects of the modern world will be reflected in the series, but honestly, at this point, that feels like an automatic or programmed response from some of the actors, that they think it's somehow a selling point, or they need to feel like their fictional characters are of the utmost importance to the real world. But I'm trying not to let that bother me. I'm trying to keep a very open mind about this one, considering I haven't heard any of that from the showrunner himself, from Tony Gilroy. He's instead mainly talked about how he wanted to just make a sort of political intrigue type spy thriller that doesn't exactly feel like Star Wars, or that treats it more seriously than anything has before. In other words, something that isn't filled with fan service or just uses legacy characters as a crutch and or a way to lure in viewers. Which all sounds pretty good to me. Next up then, and coming out on October 26th, which is in the middle of Andor's run, will be Tales of the Jedi, which is just 6 animated shorts in Clone Wars style animation that will all drop on the very same day, and will feature stories about Dooku and Ahsoka, as well as include other well-known characters. Which does mean that yes, it will have legacy characters in it, but considering this is coming from Dave Filoni and will be more or less a sort of mini extension of the Clone Wars, you might want to call it, well, not only am I not so worried about it going astray, but I'm actually quite excited for this and hope to see more like it in the future, perhaps. We even got a trailer of it, and yeah, I have to say, this looks like it could be really, really good, albeit rather short with just 6 episodes. Next up here, and finally getting an official release date, is Season 2 of The Bad Batch, and that date is going to be January 4th, a little over a month after Andor ends. And again, I'm excited for this, considering I enjoyed Season 1 quite a bit. My biggest hope for it is that it embraces story arcs over one-off episodes, which was oftentimes kind of frustrating about Season 1, that you'd get a really good idea for a story, and it'd just feel kind of rushed or crammed into a 122-minute episode or so. And as talked about before, I think the Clone Wars animated series really hit its stride when it fully adopted the story arc approach sometime around Season 3, when it continuously strung together 3 or 4 episodes at a time into something kind of resembling a mini-movie. And some of those mini-movies turned out to be some of the best Star Wars seen anywhere. My other hope for Season 2 is getting more about what happens exactly to the clones, and I don't mean just our main character clones, but the average clone. We gotta look at one essentially begging for change in the Kenobi series, so let's see more of that kind of thing. I don't mean more clones having to beg for change, but just more of the hardships that they will face after being used to help turn the Republic into the Empire, and then being discarded. Next up then we have The Mandalorian Season 3, and we did finally get the trailer for it, the one that was already shown at Star Wars Celebration a few months ago, and one many of us had already seen a blurry version of online in some place, though it was great to now finally get to see it in high def and get to actually, well, see everything in it. And flat out, this is currently the premier flagship series of the franchise, and one of the few pieces of content that almost all fans have enjoyed. And I've got nothing but confidence that Favreau and Filoni will deliver with Season 3. I'm nothing but excited for this one. That said, do I still think Grogu and Din Djarin should have spent a little more time apart and not been reunited in the Book of Boba Fett? Yes, I still, conspiracy theory, think that may be a decision that came down from above, that Disney was more concerned with selling Grogu merchandise than allowing the story or Din Djarin to kind of breathe just a little bit and to grow somewhat without Grogu. Nevertheless, I'm ready to deep dive into Mando culture, which this season does seem likely to do. And I mean more so than the 2 previous seasons already did. However, what's interesting about the trailer, or at the end of the trailer, is that the release date was only announced to be 2023, after we'd been told before it would be February 2023. Now, it could be that they were just being vague for reasons, and it still indeed is coming in February. Or it could be that it was pushed back, and I tend to lean towards the latter, unfortunately, because we do have The Bad Batch Season 2 again starting early January. And when you consider Season 1 was 16 episodes long, it stands to reason Season 2 would be about the same length, maybe the same length, meaning it'll run into early spring, which could mean that Mando Season 3 could be released in early spring upon its conclusion, or that there might be some overlap. But my guess, and I do want to be wrong, is that the release of Season 3 may have been pushed back a little bit and won't be in February. Next up is Season 2 of Star Wars Visions, which we've only been told before is going to come out sometime in the spring, and I don't believe was mentioned at all yesterday, so who knows, that tentative spring release date could be the same or it could have changed. And as someone who very much did enjoy the first season of Visions, I'm looking forward to this one, which will branch beyond Japanese anime style and into different styles around the world, which sounds all well and good, though part of me would have maybe preferred picking one of the stories from the first season, like The Ninth Jedi, and expanding that into its own show. I actually thought that premise had a lot going for it and really could have been turned into a whole trilogy of films if expanded and explored properly. Moving on, and this is where the real guesstimating begins, we have the Ahsoka series. And I'm going to guess, with filming still in progress and yet to wrap, that we're looking at a next summer release on this one, sometime after The Mandalorian Season 3, which, again, may have been pushed back a bit. And we know there's no way they'd overlap 2 live action shows. Certainly animated and live action could see overlap, but not 2 live actions. And though we didn't get to see the teaser trailer that had been shown elsewhere before, we did get an image of Sabine looking at the mural of the whole Ghost crew as seen at the very end of Rebels, and right before Ahsoka shows up, we saw that in live action now. Then factor in the recent casting of Ezra Bridger, and we know with 99.9% certainty that at least the first season of Ahsoka is going to be about the hunt for Ezra, along with probably some other stuff too. And yes, I think that means we will finally be getting a live-action Thrawn in the series too. One way or another, as a big fan of Ahsoka, I am excited for this one. I know some might say Ahsoka's story should have ended in Rebels at the hands of Darth Vader, and I think there's an argument to be made. and others will say Filoni is a little too attached to the character. But again, considering this will pick up after Rebels, that it'll carry on that story, and I personally did enjoy Rebels, I'm interested to see that. I'm interested to see whatever else Filoni ultimately has in store with us for the character and the series as well. Next up, and probably coming out in fall and or winter of next year back-to-back, are two more shows that are currently in production, those being Skeleton Crew and The Acolyte. And for me, these are both kind of wild cards. We don't know a whole lot about either one of them, and what we do know is interesting. First up, there's Skeleton Crew, which we know will star Jude Law. We even got a look at his character at D23 yesterday. And that John Watts from Spider-Man No Way Home is essentially the showrunner on this. Beyond that, we know it's currently in production, and it'll be set in the time period of The Mandalorian and be about kids who get lost in space. Though it's not exactly supposed to be a kids show, or so they've told us. Then there's The Acolyte, which will be about dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic. And this one has me the most, shall we say, concerned because it'll be set around the time period when Darth Plagueis should be in play, if you will. And when you consider the Plagueis novel just might be my favorite EU book, and that it could more or less still just fit into the canon as is, I'm not going to be too keen on potentially seeing a different iteration of this time period, especially one that really changes the story of Plagueis from that book. That said, there is always the chance that it'll be a pleasant surprise, or maybe even honor the book, who knows. And I have, for the most part, enjoyed the High Republic era, so if this is some kind of well-done culmination of that, it could be interesting. Though I don't know how much that'll be the case, or that it'll be based off all the current stuff coming out for the High Republic era, considering a lot of people are not reading it and do not care at all about the High Republic. So it'll likely be more of its own thing than some kind of culmination of that, I feel. So in closing, I know a lot of people will have their doubts about any and all of these upcoming shows, that they're losing or lost their faith in Disney Star Wars, and maybe rightfully so. But as I've said before, I will always root for Star Wars itself, no matter who owns it, runs it, or whatever. I will always want to see it be good, and so I'll continue to cover it as fairly as I possibly can. And if over the next year these shows turn out to be really good, I'll certainly say as much. And if they don't, it'll be a different story. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about any and all of these upcoming shows. Which ones are you excited for, if any, and which ones are you maybe not so excited for? Do you have hope for the future of Star Wars, or does this just look like a generic lineup that you are going to skip? Whatever the case may be, leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.